Hi, it's Marie from Still Dreaming Homestead. Glad to be back with you. We're continuing to read in our book, Little House on the Prairie by Laura Ingalls Wilder. We're on chapter 26. That's the last chapter in this book. And here is the picture. So there's their house and the stable they made. And they're going to be going out. That's the name of this chapter. After breakfast next morning, Pa and Ma packed the wagon. First, all the bedding was made into two beds, laid on top of each other across the back of the wagon, and carefully covered with a pretty plaid blanket. Mary and Laura and baby Carrie would ride there in the daytime. At night, the top bed would be put in the front of the wagon for Pa and Ma to sleep in, and Mary and Laura would sleep in the bottom bed where it was. Next, Pa took the small cupboard from the wall, and in it Ma packed the food and the dishes. Pa put the cupboard under the wagon seat, and in front of it he laid a sack of corn for the horses. "It'll make a good rest for our feet, Carolyn," he said to Ma. Ma packed all the clothing into two carpet bags. Now those were made of material, but they really were like a suitcase. And Pa hung them from the wagon bows inside the wagon. Opposite them, he hung his rifle in its straps, and his bullet pouch and powder horn beneath it. His fiddle in its box he laid on one end of the bed where it would ride smoothly and softly. Ma wrapped the black iron spider, the bake oven, and the coffee pot in sacks and put them in the wagon, while Pa tied the rocking chair and tub outside and hung the water bucket and the horse bucket underneath. And he put the tin lantern carefully in the front corner of the wagon box, where the sack of corn held it still. Now the wagon was loaded. The only thing they could not take was the plow. Well, that could not be helped. There was no room for it. When they came to wherever they were going, Pa would get more furs to trade for another plow. Laura and Mary climbed into the wagon. Sorry, it's late. And sat on the bed in the back. Ma put baby Carrie between them. They were all freshly washed and combed. Pa said they were clean as a hound's tooth, and Ma told them they were bright as new pennies. Then Pa hitched Pet and Patty to the wagon. Ma climbed to her place on the seat and held the lines, and suddenly Laura wanted to see the house again. She asked Pa to please let her look out. He loosened the rope in the back of the wagon cover, and that made a large round hole. Laura and Mary could look out of it, but still the rope held up enough canvas to keep baby Carrie from tumbling into the feed box. The snug log house looked just as it always had. It did not seem to know they were going away. Pa stood a moment in the doorway and looked all around inside. He looked at the bedstead, the fireplace, the glass windows. Then he closed the door carefully, leaving the latch string out. Somebody might need shelter, he said. He climbed into his place beside Ma, gathered the reins in his own hands, and chirruped, "Get up," to Pet and Patty. Jack went under the wagon. Pet whinnied to Bunny, who came to walk beside her, and they were off. Just before the creek road went down into the bottoms, Pa stopped the mustangs, and they all looked back. As far as they could see, to the east and to the south and the west, Nothing was moving on all the vastness of the prairie. Only the green grass was rippling in the wind, and white clouds drifted high in the clear sky. "It's a great country, Carolyn," he said, "but there will be Indians and wolves here for many a long day." The little log house and the little stable sat lonely in the stillness. Then Patty briskly started onward. Pet and Patty. The wagon went down from the bluffs into the wooded creek bottoms, and high in the tree top a mockingbird began to sing. "I never heard a mockingbird sing so early," said Ma. And Pa answered softly, "He's telling us goodbye." See, this is kind of what it looked like when they got up off that high prairie up there and came down to the creek bottoms. They rode down through the low hills to the creek. The ford was low, an easy crossing. That's the place they were going to go across the river. On they went across the bottoms where antlered deers stood up to watch them passing, and mother deer with their fawns bounded into the shadows of the woods. And up between the steep red earth cliffs, the wagon climbed to the prairie again. Pet and Patty were eager to go. Their hooves had made muffled sounds in the bottoms, but now they rang on the hard prairie, and the wind sang shrill against the foremost wagon bows. Pa and Ma were still and silent on the wagon seat, and Mary and Laura were quiet too. But Laura felt all excited inside. You never know what will happen next, nor what you'll see tomorrow when you're traveling in a covered wagon. At noon, Pa stopped beside a little spring to let the mustangs eat, drink, and rest. The spring would soon be dry in the summer heat, but there was plenty of water now. Ma took cold cornbread and meat from the food box, and they all ate sitting on the clean grass in the shade of the wagon. They drank from the spring, and Laura and Mary ran around the grass picking wildflowers while Ma tidied the food box and Pa hitched Pet and Patty again. Then for a long time they went across the prairie. There was nothing to be seen but blowing grass, the sky, and endless wagon track. Now and then a rabbit bounded away, hopped. Sometimes a prairie chicken with her brood of prairie chicks scuttled out of sight in the grass. Baby Carrie slept. And Mary and Laura were almost asleep when they heard Pa say, "Something's wrong there." Laura jumped up, and far ahead on the prairie she saw a small, light-colored bump. She couldn't see anything else unusual. "Where?" she asked Pa. "There," Pa said, nodding towards the bump. "It isn't moving." Laura didn't say any more. She kept on looking and saw that the bump was a covered wagon. Slowly it grew bigger because they were getting closer. Nothing moved anywhere around it. Then she saw something dark in front of it. The dark thing was two people sitting on the wagon tongue. They were a man and a woman. They sat looking down at their feet, and they moved only their heads to look up when Pet and Patty stopped in front of them. "What's wrong? Where are your horses?" Pa asked. "I don't know," said the man. "I tied them to the wagon last night, and this morning they were gone. Somebody cut the ropes and took them away in the night." "What about your dogs?" said Pa. "Haven't got a dog," the man said. Jack stayed under the wagon. He didn't growl, but he did come out once. He was a sensible dog, and he knew what to do when he met strangers. Well, your horses are gone, Pa told the man. You'll never see them again. Hanging's too good for horse thieves. Yes, the man said. Pa looked at Ma, and Ma barely nodded. Then Pa said, "Come ride with us to Independence." "No," said the man. "All we've got is in this wagon. We won't leave it." "Why, man, what will you do?" Pa exclaimed. "There'll be nobody along here for days, weeks. You can't stay here." "I don't know," the man said. "We'll stay with our wagon," the woman said. She was looking down at her hands clasped in her lap, and Laura couldn't see her face. She could see only the side of the sunbonnet. "Better come," Pa told them. "You can come back for your wagon." "No," the woman said. They wouldn't leave the wagon. Everything they owned in the whole world was in it. So at last Pa drove on, leaving them sitting on the wagon tongue all alone in the prairie. Pa muttered to himself, "Tenderfeet, everything they own and no dog to watch it. Didn't keep watch himself and tied the horses with ropes." Pa snorted, "Tenderfeet." He said it again. "Shouldn't be allowed loose west of the Mississippi." "But Charles, whatever will become of them?" Ma asked him. "There are soldiers at Independence," he said. "I'll tell the captain, and he'll send out men to bring them in. They can hold out that long. But it's darn lucky for them that we came by. If we hadn't, there's no telling when they would have been found." Laura watched that lonely wagon until it was only a small lump on the prairie. Then it was a speck. Then it was gone. All the rest of that day, Pa drove on and on. They didn't see anybody. When the sun was setting, Pa stopped by a well. A house had once been there, but it had burned. The well had held plenty of good water, and Laura and Mary gathered bits of half-burnt wood to make the fire, while Pa unhitched and watered the horses and put them on picket lines. Then Pa took the seat down from the wagon and lifted out the food box. The fire burned beautifully, and Ma quickly got supper. Everything was just as it used to be before they built the house. Pa and Ma and Carrie were in the wagon seat. Laura and Mary sat on the wagon tongue. They ate the good supper hot from the campfire. Pet and Patty and Bunny munched the good grass, and Laura saved bits for Jack, who mustn't beg, but could eat his fill as soon as supper was over. Then the sun went down. Far away in the west, it was time to make the camp ready for night. Pa chained Pet and Patty to the feed boxes at the end of the wagon. He chained Bunny to the side, and he fed them all their supper of corn. Then he sat by the fire and smoked his pipe, while Ma tucked Mary and Laura into bed and laid baby Carrie beside them. She sat down beside Pa at the fire, and Pa took his fiddle out of its box and began to play. "Oh, Susanna, don't you cry for me," the fiddle wailed, and Pa began to sing. "I went to California with my washpan on my knee, and every time I thought of home, I wished it wasn't me." "Do you know, Carolyn," Pa stopped singing to say, "I've been thinking what fun the rabbits will have eating the garden we planted." "Don't, Charles," Ma said. "Never mind, Carolyn," Pa told her. "We'll make a better garden. Anyway, we're taking more out of Indian Territory than we took in. I don't know what, Ma said, and Pa answered, why, there's the mule. Then Ma laughed and Pa and the fiddle sang again. In Dixieland I'll take my stand and live and die in Dixie. Away, 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 away down south in Dixie. They sang with a lilt and a swing that almost lifted Laura right out of bed. She must lie still and not wake Carrie. Mary was sleeping too, but Laura had never been wider awake. She heard Jack making his bed under the wagon. He was turned around and around, trampling on the grass. Then he curled into that round nest with a flop and a sigh of satisfaction. Pet and Patty were munching the last of their corn, and their chains rattled. Bunny lay down beside the wagon. They were all there together, safe and comfortable for the night, under the wide starlit sky. Once more the covered wagon was home. The fiddle began to play a marching tune, and Pa's clear voice was singing like a deep-toned bell. And we'll rally round the flag, boys, we'll rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom. Laura felt that she must shout too, but softly Ma looked in through the round hole in the wagon cover. Charles, she said, Laura's wide awake. She can't sleep if you play such music as that. Pa didn't answer, but the voice of the fiddle changed. Softly and slurringly, it began a long, swinging rhythm that seemed to rock Laura gently. She felt her eyelids closing. She began to drift over endless waves of prairie grasses, and Pa's voice began and then went with her, singing. Row away, row over the waters blue, like a feather we'll sail in our gum tree canoe. Row the boat lightly, love, over the sea. Daily and nightly I'll wander with thee. And that's the end of this book. It surely was very good. Let's see what the next story will be. I think it's listed here someplace. Not there. Oh, here on the back. So we already read Little House in the Big Woods, and we read Farmer Boy and Little House on the Prairie. Now we've read all three of those. Now, if you've just found my channel, go back to the playlist and you can hear all of these stories. So tomorrow we'll start the new book, which is On the Banks of Plum Creek. I remember reading that, and that was very interesting. So I think you're going to like it. Well, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. I want to pray blessings on you and yours in your house and out of your house in the day and the night. Whatever you do, keep dreaming. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. And press the notification bell. If you know of anybody else that might enjoy my channel, please share it with them. You can share it on Facebook or just tell people about it wherever you can on your social media. All right. Well, I'll be reading to you tomorrow. Good night.